and thank you for joining us for another episode of Fort Worth Roots.
I mean, we're doing this for the music community. Right. If we wanted to do something that made a lot of money, we'd have the real estate festival, the plastic surgeon festival. We'd be doing things that we can monetize. But we love music. Historically, that's been one of the most important things that the Weekly supports. And so we invest time and money into something because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Information on upcoming events and more about all of our sponsors here at the Fort Worth Roots can be found at the end of the episode. This episode, we would like to spotlight Houk Walker Originals. HoukWalker.com is where you can find these folks. They offer a huge variety of unique and professionalized gifts. Also, laser engraving to customize just about anything you can think of. Again, more information on our sponsors and events that we got coming up at the end of the show. Today's episode is extremely exciting for me because it's with another very influential person inside the creative environment here in Fort Worth, Texas. And today we're going to talk a lot about the Fort Worth Weekly, which you can find at fwweekly.com. You can also get them on Instagram and YouTube as Fort Worth Weekly. And on TikTok, even there's a Fort_Worth_Weekly. And you can see some of these awesome videos that they're doing with local businesses around Fort Worth and just kind of highlighting what's going on in the area. But be careful. When I was looking them up on TikTok, there are already fake Fort Worth Weekly TikTok accounts. So it's Fort_Worth_Weekly on TikTok. Fort Worth Weekly on the other two, Instagram and YouTube. And of course, the website again is fwweekly.com, and this will be in the show notes. Our guest is an award-winning staff writer for the Fort Worth Weekly. He's also an educator and a huge advocate for the Fort Worth artistic community. Please give it up for our new friend, Mr. Edward Brown, and let's start the show. Well, man, thank you so much for reaching out to me. This was it's very flattering, somebody in your position to contact a lowly podcaster like myself. And
I reached out for a reason.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, and I heard your episode on the Funky Panther, and really enjoyed that, and learned a little bit about what was going into that. What goes into what you do on a daily basis, but I'd like to cover a little bit more of that today. And
cool.
you had said that you wanted to start off by talking about what the Weekly does.
Yeah, I'd like to just describe the Weekly. We're a part of a family of print publications known as Alternative News Media. So we're all members of the Association for Alternative News Media, and we're loosely called Alt Weeklies. Okay. And you may be familiar with the Dallas Observer, Austin Chronicle, same family of magazines. I think actually it's a better term.
So all kind of a family of publications.
It is. Yeah, and that does not mean that they're owned by the same person. In fact, we're independently owned. We're owned by Lee Newquist. So it's kind of a rarity in the media world to have a completely independently owned, especially in the for-profit sector, to have an independently owned newspaper, and we are independently owned. But Alt Weeklies, if I can just describe them simply, they're free publications, print publications. So you see the red bins or the racks inside a restaurant or a coffee shop or a liquor store, Central Market.
We're at Pouring Glory.
Pouring Glory, yeah, it's a great spot. And we're free because we're paid by advertisers, right? It's a different model than this the Star Telegram, which is also paid by advertisers, but they also rely on subscription.
It's like $16 a month.
Yeah, if you want to have it, sent to your house or if online. I do the online subscription. I think they just debited my account this morning. Yeah. So our model is different. So we're free. We cover Alt Weeklies across the country, tend to focus on arts, entertainments, and news, right? So whereas the Star Telegram focuses on news, less so, unfortunately, like a lot of papers, arts coverage, because that's a whole different conversation. But we do try to cover the local art scene, culture, photographers, podcasts would fall under culture as well, and news. And so if you if you grab a copy of the weekly, at the beginning, you'll see kind of the news section. Generally, we'll have a cover story, which is long form journalism. It'll take you 10, 15 minutes to read the story, but whenever we dig into something, we dig into it very deeply. And so you don't find a whole lot of long form journalism these days, 4,000 word count. And we do that pretty much every week.
Yeah. Is that because there's just not a desire for it? People are less likely to read long format these days?
It's always been an alt-weekly thing.
Okay.
And it's always been something that Alt Weekly specialized in. Daily papers have always kind of done shorter news stories. So that's been true for decades. And you're right, a lot of people, in today's world, you don't have the bandwidth to sit down, read a long-form journalism. But for those who do, and I would say if that story really mattered to you, you want the whole. You want all that context matters, when you're trying to dig into a subject, especially one that really captures your attention. Or people might dig back 10 years from now doing research, and they'll rely on our long-form stories because we did a lot of work, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's also a historical document that people can go back and see what was going on at that time period.
Well, you'll see I've got newspapers here in the studio on the wall there. Like you said, it's historical. It marks a moment in time, and you can frame it. Or you can file it away.
Excuse me. And the daily papers are called the papers of record for a city. So their job really is to document history. And people can go back and catalog that. All weeklies, we have an editorial section, and that's editorials for folks who don't know. It's basically an opinion-based article by the editorial board. And so you'll see that under static. And that's the editorial board is myself and Anthony Mariani, our editor. And our editorials tend to be left-leaning. So, people get, when they read our editorials, they'll, like, oh, how could they say that? Well, all weeklies generally, when they write editorials, that's where you'll see the political progressiveness to it. But on our metros and our cover stories, that's more in line with what you find with daily papers, where you wouldn't know, there's nothing politicized about it. Right. So, yeah. And
I know that the listeners of this show would really appreciate your short interviews that you do with business owners that I catch all the time. You did one just recently with Joe Tackey, and it was a great little interview. I told you last night, and complimented you about how you managed Joe well, because Joe likes to go all over the place. I
steered him. He did a great job. He was a great interviewee. We started doing more video content, and I just feel like in today's world, you guys do the same thing. I think video content is just important. You have to have some kind of video content. So we are a print publication foremost, but we have our website. We have our Instagram page at FW Weekly, which has around 40,000 followers.
Wow.
And we release twice a week. We release very short video interviews. Thanks for mentioning that. And then we release that on Instagram. That's on our YouTube channel. We just started a TikTok channel. See how that goes. And we always release the content on our blog. I don't understand TikTok
TikTok's the wave of the future.
I guess so, but I feel like I'm missing that boat.
But I really like those videos because it engages the community, connects people with what's going on in the city, and there's no political slant to it whatsoever.
Correct.
So the Fort Worth Roots listeners would really enjoy that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Lee. You just mentioned him. He's the owner of the Fort Worth Weekly. Is he a local?
His history. No, he's not from here, but he's lived here. I know his son grew up here.
He lives here.
But he lives here, and he's been here for a couple decades.
Yeah.
I do know his family, him and his brother used to work at the New Times in Phoenix, which is an alt weekly. I think they owned it. At one point, they owned the Dallas Observer, which is interesting.
Really?
They sold it, and then so I guess he was in Dallas at that time. But he's been in Fort Worth for a long time. I think he's from the Midwest, if I had to guess.
Well, I'm from originally when I was a little kid. We were from Midland, Texas, and I just kind of migrated this way. And so I've been here for coming up on 14 years. Right. I think there's something to be said about people that weren't just born here.
Yeah, myself included.
We went through the process of finding Fort Worth, and we loved it so much we never left.
Yeah, so we found it, and I'm sure you have too. I've traveled across the country, so when I say that Fort Worth is the greatest city in the country, it's not from lack of having explored Texas. I mean, I've been to all the major cities. I love New York City. I love California. But when I come back home, there is something unique about here. And when I'm gone for a week, I'm excited to come back to Fort Worth. I think.
I agree with you, and we talk about that on this show quite a bit because, I've traveled the country. I've been out of the country, and Fort Worth is definitely home. It's got an intangible quality about it that's kind of hard to describe to an outsider. It is hard to describe.
And people, I think the closest thing is it's the biggest small town in the country, and you run into people at the growth. Like I grew up in the suburbs. I know what it means. It wasn't a small town, but I grew up in a suburb. I know what it means to run into people in the grocery store because the proximity. And I had that experience in Fort Worth. But we're a large city, but it's just you go into a store and you see your friends, and it reminds me of like the town I grew up in.
Yeah, And where was this?
Louisville. Yeah. Louisville, Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where is that?
Just northeast. In between Fort Worth and Dallas, but north.
Right.
Louisville.
That's right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
When you said Louisville, I started thinking Kentucky.
People think Louisville very quickly.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
But so forgot about old Louisville up there.
It's still there.
So we jumped right into it, but I was going to start off by asking you about your week. Like, what have you been up to? We had a snow week or ice week where we got locked in, and now everybody's trying to get the ball rolling again. It's only Tuesday now while we're recording, but
I was able to. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, we were all kind of forced indoors for 4 days. Twice I live within walking distance to Central Market, but it's still a good walk. It's probably a mile, but it was nice. Oh, wow. To just walk out there, get some groceries, and walk back. So I got outside, listened to a podcast, and did that, and caught up on some just random stuff I had to do, errands. Yeah. I do some content writing for Visit Fort Worth, so I got some projects done. When you're self-employed, you can't just not work. You got to be.
Well, and I made the comment when all the ice was happening that I really enjoy it when the city just slams shut like that because you've got a bunch of hats that you wear as well. I'm sure you probably feel a little bit of relief whenever you can't do anything. Like you don't have a choice. You got to stay and get caught up on some back work. It's nice. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it was nice. I think I watched a few movies, and it didn't over
anything notable.
Didn't overstress it. I am a big fan of. I think a lot of people are watching on HBO The Last of Us.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I wish I didn't have to wait a week for each episode. But they're just amazing. They're like each episode is so unique and well done.
I found out yesterday that they don't release it here in our time zone until 8:00. I didn't know that they were doing that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I assumed it was like 12:01 in the morning.
Nope. They don't. So I logged in at like 5:00 on Sunday to watch it, and it wasn't ready yet.
Yeah, I mean naturally. So usually when they say they release it on Sunday, you could. Some people would stay up till midnight, just to watch. Sometimes I'm half tempted to. Like I'm just gonna cross over the threshold to
just
watch.
So I can get
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like waiting either. I appreciate whenever a series is actually 4 or 5 seasons in, and I can just binge like crazy.
It's interesting, yeah. It seems to be a trend now that they're making you wait. Or I'm noticing more and more House of the Dragon, the Lord of the Ring, the new one. They've been releasing them one at a week. I think they're trying to discourage people from binging them. I'm assuming. Or?
Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense to me. You're engaging an audience and keeping their attention for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
4 episodes on The Last of Us, I could binge that in 4 hours, or they could keep my attention for a month.
They must have a reason for wanting to stretch it out. I mean, that's the way it used to be. And like, in the 90s, I was talking to a friend, we were joking about before streaming, kids can go back and watch something they missed. When we were kids Saturday morning,
not an option.
Missed an episode, you literally never saw it again.
Right.
X-Men, I remember being so mad if I missed an episode because there's no way for me to see it. I just will, maybe next year they might rerun it. Yeah. I might have to catch it, but
just on a lucky draw too.
Yeah, and I still I wouldn't know if it was coming back.
Because the television guide was X-Men and the time.
Yeah.
It didn't say which episode.
Oh, that's true too.
So you had no idea what you were getting.
Remember that, yeah. I remember running home, trying to get that that episode in.
Because they would do like episode release weekly or whatever, and then if they were going to do reruns, it was just you got what you got. You didn't know what was coming.
It was kind of haphazard, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then when TiVo came out, I think, was that the first one? But now you could record shows and save them for later.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that was ever an option.
Yeah.
So, streaming.
We're old.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves. I was talking to my girlfriend the other night, and the family that we were having dinner with, their daughter, I think she's 14 or 15, and she was talking about something to do with age. And I kind of leaned over the table. I was like, we're older than the internet. And then I looked it up and I showed it to her, like 1983. That's when the internet was officially like.
Can she comprehend that? Yeah, and I am a year older than that, so if that tells you anything.
I mean, you could see the look on her face, like, how's that possible? It's like telling somebody that you lived on the planet before we had a moon.
I mean, it was a fun time to grow up, though. I remember going to the store and buying 8 megs of RAM and installing it so I could play that video game. And then it requires 16 megs. Like, okay, go back to the store. I'm gonna keep upgrading. Right. It's like. I mean, you had to really work to play those video games, Yeah,
and then whenever the internet was starting to kind of get legs under it, the AOL disk era, it would take, it'd take 15 minutes to open up your email.
Yeah.
If you had an email.
Looking back, the chat rooms, AOL chat rooms were so fun, but like you didn't know who you were talking to.
No.
It was all trolls, and they say the most evil things, and you're a little kid looking back like, man, my parents shouldn't let me in those chat room.
Trolls have been around since the dawn of the internet.
They apparently were just waiting for that opportunity. Yeah, trolls have been around forever, and they got a fun outlet with those AOL chat rooms.
So you mentioned Visit Fort Worth a minute ago. So you do a little bit of writing for Visit Fort Worth. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm the music and nightlife blogger.
Okay, very cool. There's an event coming up February 17th, and they invited the Fort Worth Roots podcast to join the Jerry Jonestown Massacre podcast, and we're going to be there at the
morning breakfast.
Well, I think we're going to be there all day.
Oh, okay.
I need to look
They have
back.
their annual breakfast. I think is coming up and sold out. So
Sydney works with Visit Fort Worth.
No,
well, so I'll have to go back and look at the email, but I think we're supposed to be there all day.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
So, I think this might be the first time they've done
They're
this
expanding
with podcasters.
It. Yeah. It's pretty early. If it's the breakfast events, I remember having a hard time waking up early enough for some of those.
Yeah.
I remember being half awake.
Are you going to this one?
They sold out.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, good for them, but
yeah. So no weekly coverage there? Fort Worth Weekly won't be there?
No.
Okay.
No, yeah.
And they were going to make you, though you write for them, they were going to make you buy a ticket.
Okay, so they used to give the bloggers tickets, and then we got a discount. And this time I didn't. So I'm not trying to poo-poo anyone, but we got no perks. And sometimes there are some really fun perks. I'll call up and say, hey, can I get into this event?
Yeah.
And sometimes they try to help me when they can, but I'll bet it is such an important event by this point. Every ticket matters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think several years ago when they would let us in, for free or for a discount. I mean, not that it wasn't important, but it's become it is the city's State of the Union address.
Yeah.
Right. You have the mayor speaking. You have big, guests that they've paid a lot of money for. It's a big thing for the economy. So I'm sure every ticket, is important.
My palms are starting to sweat. I didn't know it was that big of a deal. Whenever they invited me, I was like, yeah, cool, I'll be there. And then like little by little, I'm finding out.
Anyone who's anyone's going to be.
This is a big thing.
Yeah, it's a red carpet event for the city of Fort Worth.
So I should wear something a little more.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Some buttons on it.
They might kick you out. They'll think you're a bum.
I'm sorry, sir. We're not giving anything away today. Yeah. Nah. Okay.
Have fun,
Dress it up. What's the difference between Visit Fort Worth and Visit DFW? Are those intertwined?
You know what? I used to write for Visit DFW. I think they've gone. I don't think they're still around.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I can explain that. Visit DFW. I used to work for McKinsey, and she used to write for. She was a social media director for Visit Fort Worth, and then she oversaw Visit DFW, and I was doing blogs for them too. And basically, all the cities in North Texas were kind of pitching in a little bit of money to promote Visit DFW.
Okay.
And what Visit DFW had in common with Visit Fort Worth, and most big cities have a convention visitors bureau, is what it basically is, right. And they tend to rebrand to Visit Dallas. It's just easier. It's to draw in tourists, right? It's a huge boon for tourism economy is big. That's what floats our hotels. Yeah. It's such a vital part of any city's economy if they take it seriously that they really need full-time staff to let the country and the world know what do we have to offer. So I'm sure you've seen those ads. They're everywhere. Visit Wisconsin and or on the radio. I mean they're trying to get us to visit them and Visit Fort Worth has done an incredible job. Kind of rebranding Fort Worth. It used to be the city of cowboys and culture, and now it's the modern West. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a little less hokey.
Shifted a bit.
If I can say a little bit more contemporary. They've done a really good job of, and we're both creative, so we both love plugin creatives, a couple years ago, they did a study and they asked people, when you want to go visit a city, what are you looking for, right? Younger people especially say culture, coffee, nightlife, singer-songwriters, art scene, right?
You just described Fort Worth.
So what Visit Fort Worth realizes after they got the poll back, the marketing, research is, man, we need to really promote our creative class. Yeah. And you saw maybe starting 5 years ago, and they still do this. They do a really good job because I get assigned to profile this musician and this musician, especially, persons of color, historically underrepresented, in those kind of marketing projects. You saw a real effort to highlight local culture. I think you probably noticed that too.
Oh yeah.
So, but that's what people want when they want to visit. They do want to visit a city that has a vibrant cultural life, which is a great vindication for our fellow creatives. They make Fort Worth livable and also visitable.
This place, Fort Worth, is going to turn into kind of what Austin was 15, 20 years ago, because this has become kind of an oasis for musicians. And I think after 2020, everybody's going to start, these stories of how we took care of our musicians in this community is going to get out to the world. And people are going to want to do their art here in Fort Worth, because we do take care of our musicians as a community. The
culture, and we're both pretty plugged in, the musicians, what they say to you is, especially if they're from the outside, is it's a very collaborative, friendly, non-competitive environment. So when you come in, even if you're an outsider, their fellow musicians are saying, hey, let's collab, you can open up for my act. They feel very welcome, and that's a very nurturing environment. Who knows, maybe in 20 years it'll be catty, right? I mean, who knows, but hopefully it never changes, but right now it is very welcoming, and the artist community is the same way too, I can say.
It trickles back. It starts at the ownership level, or what, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but our business owners are the ones that are making this a great place for musicians. People like Tim Love, and I've since I did the interview with Tim Love, I didn't know that he had so many people that had so many stories about him. But there's quite a few people out there that tell me, I'm not going to listen to that because Tim Love. I'm thinking, listen to the episode. You should. You should find out a little bit about this guy.
I'll make a point.
But people like him have made it a point to have live music at their venues all the time. And say whatever you will about those businesses, but because of his actions, those people are able to have full-time gigs. They have some stability there, and they're able to count on places like that. And there's other business owners all over Fort Worth that are doing that. I'm just saying Tim Love because I've interviewed him, and I know he has a bunch of venues around here in Tanna Hills. And even though that one's kind of geared towards national acts, he has still done a good job of bringing in local
when I'm there, there's artists, singer-songwriters in the restaurant portion, and then big acts. And next door, it's Second Rodeo, Jason Basso. He books,
now, that's not a Tim Love place, is it?
No, he owns, Jason Basso owns Second Rodeo.
Right.
But they book 3 bands a day throughout the year.
That's wild.
And he told me, I'm pretty sure he said $400,000 budget a year. So you talk about
for that one location.
Correct. Yeah, you talk about the positive role business owners can have in supporting the music community. I mean, he's allocated almost $500,000 a year to live music. He loves it. He loves outlaw country. He loves Texas roots music, genuinely.
And they have other locations though, right? And they're one in Dallas. It's not a Second Rodeo, but it's owned by the same people.
So he's the guy behind Twisted Root, and I believe he has sold. I think he's out of that venture. So he does have a new location in North Fort Worth, the Truck Yard.
Okay.
So that's probably
what I'm thinking.
That's what you're thinking of. Yeah, because there are multiple locations of the Truck Yard, and he's involved. I haven't been up there yet, but I'm going to go up there and check it out.
The Truck Yard's got like a dog park and food trucks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah, from the photos, it looks like.
I haven't seen it either. But yeah, there's so much happening. It's impossible to keep up. I'm always amazed whenever somebody, and I'll ask you towards the end of the episode, like favorite food places and stuff, but I'll have people on the show and we'll start talking about food places here in Fort Worth, and I'm always amazed at, I've never heard of that place. And they're like ranting and raving about how good it is. And I'm thinking, how have I not, because I ask this question all the time, how could I have possibly missed it? But there are so many places in Fort Worth, excellent music venues, bars, restaurants, all these awesome places that you could make a full-time job out of just trying to keep up with that.
Correct. No, we couldn't. I mean, we run one Eats article a week, and we're probably falling behind. There's just so many things opening up. So,
and especially like the Magnolia Hospital District. I don't know what you would call that, but I think at one point, right before COVID hit, they were targeted to have 40 additional restaurants opening in that little area within the next year.
Okay.
And I heard that right before COVID. So I don't know how many of those actually
slowed
made
down
it
a little
in,
bit, but still, there's a lot. Yeah, that's a hot spot.
I went off on a tangent. I'm not sure.
We're hungry, I guess. Let's just go.
Did you have breakfast this morning?
Pause the episode and go get some food. Come back.
Have you not eaten yet?
I had a very small breakfast, but yeah, I'm enjoying talking about food for some reason. Yeah.
Well, we'll skip to that part of the episode then. What do you think you're going to have for lunch after you get out of here?
Oh wow! So I do love the near South Side for food. And let's see. So I reviewed this week. I have a review out. It's a vegan place called It's Food. That's literally the name of the food truck. It's right next to Fort Liquor and Seneca Glass Studio. So it used to be Magnolia, Chimera, right? West Magnolia Avenue. It's a little food truck. I'm not a vegan, but the food is amazing. So I mean, it is plant-based vegan. So
do you like Spiral?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's another good one too.
Okay.
So
because that's the only vegan place I've been to, and I think it's all vegan, right? Spiral doesn't have any kind of.
It is authentically vegan. Yeah, you won't find any cheese in there.
There's some strange stuff in there, but it's all good.
It is all good.
You read it on the menu, and you're like, that can't work.
Yeah, I would encourage folks to check out this food truck. You know, because I think I was really blown away by the burgers, Beyond Meat burgers or tofu. Have a really nice thick fried patty of tofu.
And they have a permanent location in a food truck right there?
I think they're pretty much parked there.
Are they associated with any of those surrounding businesses?
I think it's independently owned.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that work? You just get a permit to post up on the street?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there's some kind of permitting thing.
Yeah, I don't want to ever have a food truck. It seems like it'd be way too hot.
It is a tiny space. Yeah. I mean, or it can be a tiny space depending on.
Well, imagine August at an event.
Yeah.
I don't care if you got 6 ACs in there. You're going to be burning up in front of that grill.
There's a heat. Yeah, there's a heat source. So what are you going to do? I mean, you're standing in front of the grill. Another my favorite burger place, Gusto Burger. I don't know if you ever had that. It's a smash burger. And I don't know where he's going to move. So he used to be behind Hotel Dries.
Okay.
But smash burger concept, real simple, pickles, kind of a light cream sauce, onions, cheese.
It's a gourmet burger.
Real minimalist. It doesn't have actually I like the approach that it doesn't have a lot of lettuce and it doesn't have lettuce or tomatoes at all. It's just so it's savory.
Yeah.
But Gusto Burger is pretty amazing.
And where did you say it's at?
I think right now he's moving around because I've noticed his food truck's moving around. So he used to be parked every day behind Hotel Dries, and I'm sure he'll eventually find a spot. So that's another good one. So food trucks are kind of a fun one.
Have to hunt that down.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're as popular as they were. There's certainly a market for it because every time an event goes off, 4 or 5 food trucks need to be there, right?
I think it's a tough business.
Well, we had that little right there by Old South Pancake House. There was a food truck.
There was.
There,
I remember,
and it never really took off. I don't think. I mean, they built out like a big old gazebo looking thing with a bar and everything.
I used to go.
Did you got to go there?
I remember that. Yeah.
I think I actually went out on a deployment. I was gone for a while, and then I came back and I'm like, oh shit, it's gone.
It's some concepts that do really well in other cities for some reason don't do well in Fort Worth.
I bet if they tried it now, it would work.
Yeah.
Start doing some live music there.
Yeah. I think of the food court at West 7th that went out of business, and that.
Oh, is it not there anymore?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it closed last year or 2 years ago.
Okay.
But that concept does really well. Like there's one in Plano, Frisco. That's packed. And I just don't understand.
I went there 3 or 4 times, and. I can't say that about most of the places that closed down over there on 7th Street, but that was a good little spot. I mean, you could take your family, go in there, and if you didn't want what they were having, they
10 different directions. You can grab whatever you want.
It's a safe bet any day of the week.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good concept, but it's gone right now.
Probably the rent was too damn high because the menus, what they were charging for what they were making in that place, I can kind of see why it went out of business because it's kind of catering towards. I feel like a younger crowd, but the prices reflected an older budget. You know what I mean? Like it just, I don't know, it didn't seem to line up right. Because you'd see people in their 20s, early 30s there, and they'd have their laptops out and they're working on their laptops and hanging out. And
I think it was geared toward younger people, but they may not have had the money to eat there every day, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely
$12 little bowl.
On the low end.
But it was good. I mean,
it was really good.
Good food, but yeah. Well, real quickly, I talked to the owner when it closed, and the big thing he mentioned was he was disappointed in the lack of foot traffic from the area, because when he went there, his understanding was we got these apartments that really are booked, 95% occupancy, West 7th, all these, apartments that are there. And he thought, I guess it was maybe sold to him when he rented the space out, that these people will come eat there.
Yeah.
And it just never happened. And he mentioned they'll even Uber Jack in the Box, it's
from there to the building across the street.
People drive across the city to Uber food to them rather than walking downstairs. And
Yeah.
I remember he just was confused by it. He was like, there's a disconnect, in that model. But
Yeah, and honestly, that street right there, it dead ends into a boulevard. Like nobody is crossing the street right there. So
there's no foot traffic that would just happen to walk by there.
Yeah, and whatever restaurant that is on the other end of that street, that same block, it has closed down and reopened 2 or 3 times.
Tona used to be.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
They have closed and opened 2 or 3 different businesses.
There's a new one right now I haven't been to. Correct.
Good luck. I don't know. That's a tough spot.
Also, probably high rent.
Oh yeah. So there's several businesses that flash in the pan right down there. But as long as Kung Fu Saloon hangs on, I'll still have a reason to go down there.
Well, the West 7th area is, in wrapping it up, it's heading the right direction. I would say there's a lot of new developments. It has historically had too high bar density, right? It's just, if you look at the 10-year history of this place, it started off as one concept and then just a bunch of bars open. You had problems with that, obviously, even crime-related kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you're seeing new developments come in, and they've closed Landmark. Even
it's
though
gone.
It's all so that's going to be a office space / restaurant / rent hotel. It's going to be this really nice complex, but. What's important about that is that it's cutting down on the bar density and diversifying it, get more retail in there. So I think, it's going to help the restaurants that are there do better during the day when you have office people working who need to go eat.
Yeah.
And you'll see more of a balance to the development there.
You're probably right. That probably is better for that community. I had a apartment down there right across from Rodeo Goat, and we'd lived there for just under a year, and it was madness. I mean, every morning, beer bottles all over the street, trash everywhere. And then, of course, about all the crime stuff that's happened over the last 12 to 18 months. It's been really bad.
It has been. It's got unfortunately a bad reputation. That's kind of hard to shake once you have that.
Yeah. So we've already covered Visit Fort Worth, Visit DFW, your involvement with them. Now you have 2 positions. You're a writer. You blog. You write for Fort Worth, Visit Fort Worth, and the Weekly. But you're also an educator. Now, we talked briefly about that last night, but are you good talking about that?
Oh, yeah, sure. No problem. So, I mean...
I didn't know if I was getting a look there.
No. I apologize. I guess I wasn't sure. No, it's no secret. My background is in music. I have a music degree from UNT. And so that's I grew up, my parents are piano teachers, professional musicians.
My stepmother was a piano instructor.
Okay, cool. We got that in common. And so when I graduated from college, I moved to Fort Worth specifically to teach piano. And so I still do that, and I enjoy that.
Oh, really?
And, that my evenings are usually out driving around, teaching kiddos.
Yeah.
And in the mornings and early afternoons, I'll, do the writing stuff that I love as well.
Okay. Well, we're thinking about getting an upright in here.
Okay.
Have something for you to show off on.
I'll come by.
Yeah.
Entertain y'all.
We got to get this out of the way because the Jerry Jonestown massacre just, has been very negative, and they've been harassing you guys about the
They came to our music awards, which we appreciate.
Yeah. The nomination process, or what do we call that? I know there's the best of, and then we do it for the musicians as well, but that's separate.
Yeah. So what happened was, and I know I can describe it because I'm there, but I wasn't in charge of it. We've changed the model for nominating bands, and I think it's important to say that for 2 years we were shut down because of COVID, so we couldn't do the music awards. But we brought it back this year. And what the team decided, it wasn't my decision. I wasn't directly involved in this, but what they decided was, well, during our best ofs, which is different than our music awards, these are our two big events. Our best of is.
They seem like they kind of operate tandem, but they're separate.
Yeah, well, they more tandem this year. So what they decided was, well, while we have this ballot out for the best ofs, which is reaches a lot of people, right? It's an online ballot and a paper ballot traditionally. They just added in your opportunity to nominate the bands.
Yeah. And
historically, actually, I like this way better because historically what would happen was our old associate editor, Eric Griffey, would get together with venue owners, people who are involved in the music scene, maybe several of them, and they would put together the list of...
kind of form a panel?
They would have a panel, and they would, choose which bands they nominated, and then people would vote on that.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of that part was a little not very transparent. I mean, for better or worse.
Also sounds like a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, and the process now I think is more transparent. It's purely it's pure based on your followership. The voters are deciding, and they decide who's going to run in that genre, and then you have from that list you get your finalists, and then from those finalists they vote again, and you pick the winner. But it's all the people's choice.
So it really, if anybody was upset with the way it was conducted this year, the onus is on the people that were making the categories, right?
If they're upset about who actually voted or who won,
I think the majority of the conversation that I've heard has been focused on the categories, how they were structured, and how, I guess, in previous years there have been a lot more categories. But as you're describing it, it makes perfect sense. You had people that knew music, understood the culture of it, and they formed the categories versus this past year, which was the community deciding what categories.
I think that's always going to be a sticking point because even the panelists would sometimes put musicians in certain categories that they don't feel they belong in. And that's probably still an issue too. We might expand the categories next year, right? Yeah. So this is literally the first time we're coming back out of the 2-year lockdown, with these categories. And again, I wasn't in charge of deciding, what the categories were. If you follow our best ofs, that's smaller than it was before COVID. We I think maybe it was like twice, the number of categories we had was twice as big. It's gotten smaller. Yeah. And part of that's just due to the smaller team at the weekly, and just for economic reasons, what we can put together and logistically work on. But I think another critique that I heard, which is very fair, was that the award ceremony wasn't announced very early, and I know from talking to some musicians, they wish they had known about it beforehand so they can invite their friends and family. And so that's definitely a fair critique. And I think next year when we have time to look forward, instead of just trying to get this done, we can announce things ahead of time so folks can come to the performances and then the award ceremony, which is separate.
It did kind of sneak up on me too, and I just figured that was due to my own ignorance, but I was out of town, so it didn't matter anyway.
Well, we do our best. I mean, we put a lot of print space into promoting the events, did video content. It was on our websites. I mean, we did, but I think we could have done it earlier, but maybe next year we'll get a chance to fix all that.
2-year break, everybody was affected by COVID. You guys are getting the wheels rolling again, and I mean, you're working with a smaller staff. It makes perfect sense. Yeah, I think people were just ready for what they'd expect. They had expectations based on what had happened in the past.
It is not going to be like the past. Yeah. We our staff used to be 30 people. It's 10.
Wow.
So, we can't have 20 venues like we used to, rent, not rent out, but the festival used to be like, all of West 7th, the cultural district area. And anyway, like you would have like 15 bars with, I remember going to those events and helping, but that's realistically not going to happen again because we just don't have the manpower to do that anymore. So
makes perfect sense. And if anybody's ever put on something like that, and I've helped with very small events, and it will consume 3-4 months of my time. I mean, it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of coordinating.
I want to say it might grow next year. I'm definitely not saying that it's never. It'll probably never return to that huge 15 venue festival, that we used to have during the summers. It was.
I bet you pull it off one day. I got faith.
Anything could happen.
Well,
anything could happen.
So I'm not a musician, so I'm not going to speak intelligently on this, but Dustin Snyder and Stubbs, if they wanted to have you on the show, you think you'd guest on the Jerry Jonestown Massacre and talk to them about it?
To talk to them about
the weekly and the award ceremony and all that.
Yeah, I would not go on there if they're just going to bombard me with baseless accusations. And I've heard the recent episodes, and it didn't bode well with me.
Yeah, I know. I love those guys, and they don't pull any punches. But I have heard them say positive things about the weekly,
Sure.
and I know that they do appreciate everything that you guys do.
They spotlight the community, and I'm all for anyone who does that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you guys at the weekly, you're putting out a free publication.
Yeah.
You're putting on events for the city. You're
Yeah.
connecting our community, and you're not charging anybody. So
Yeah, and the musical
so
awards,
you
It's all
complain about a free meal.
It's all for free. It's all given for free, and I can say, that the musical word stuff, it's not something that we make a dime on, right?
Right.
I mean, we're doing this for the music
Right.
community. If we wanted to do something that made a lot of money, we'd have the Real Estate Festival, the Plastic Surgeon Festival. We'd be doing things that
Right.
we can monetize, but we love music. Historically, that's been one of the most important things that the weekly supports, and so we invest time and money into something because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that is. I mean, that would bother me to no end. People getting upset about the way things are being presented or put on, or the content of the publication. Kind of. Armchair quarterback, is that what they call it?
Yeah, and it is, again, one thing that we make money, but it's not from reviewing bands like
Right.
or giving away panthies.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you do. Thank you to the weekly for what y'all
Thanks
do.
to Anthony Mariani, Patrick Higgins, Juan Govia.
Shout out to Lee.
And I'm not a music writer, but we have a great team of music writers. Steve Stewart, who's been around longer than I have, and he is a performing musician. So when he talks about bands, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's important. You get an idiot like me who knows nothing about music talking about it, and it's better whenever they know.
and you can tell too. I think it doesn't mean that someone who's not a musician can't do a good job, but it definitely lends credibility when you have someone
100%.
who knows what it means to
live the scene.
Yeah, to be out there performing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Shout out to Juan Govea too. That guy, he's he's been on the show. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, good dude. Yeah. Actually, we did the recording at his house. I don't think I had the studio quite this set up yet. Like I said, it's not finished yet, but it was really not finished back then.
Oh yeah. We love Juan. Great
good
photographer
dude.
as well.
Oh, so. Incredible. Yeah, and he's got an interesting eye. He'll take pictures of stuff that when you see it, you're like, oh, that looks amazing. I never would have thought to take a picture of that, but it looks great. So he's got a very interesting eye. Yeah. I think I've asked you all the really difficult questions.
Okay.
So we talked about you as an educator. Okay, we talked about this last night. You kind of wanted to cover a typical work week for a reporter like yourself. We think of kind of the cinematic version, maybe Peter Parker walking into the Daily Globe or whatever
Peter,
that is.
Go photograph this.
Where's Peter? Parker, go do this. Exactly. Right. So that's the image we have of a reporter
an
like
editor
yourself.
Yelling at him. Yeah.
Yeah, the editor calling all the shots. But you were explaining to me last night that's not at all how it works.
Yeah, this is a fun one to talk about because I do run across this perception a lot that I'm told what to write about, and sometimes I would say maybe 10% of the time, my editor will have, hey, this is a really important thing, we should cover it, and of course I do it, right? But what we used to have, and a lot of newsrooms have this, are pitching episodes where they'll sit down at a round table.
Just you and some of the other staff?
Yeah, okay. And we don't do this anymore because it's a smaller team after COVID. A lot of things changed, but we used to just have a meeting and each writer pitches their story. I mean, it's literally a pitch. So you're trying to convince the editor that what you found is worth publishing, right. And he'll give a thumbs up or thumbs down, or say, well, hash that a little bit more, come back. But quite often, if you did your research, you'd walk away with an assignment, right. And we still do that, but now I do it by email. We're just kind of used to working remotely, so every couple of weeks I'll email Anthony, and sometimes I'm pitching him stories, and so he has to approve it. I cannot. That's what makes him the editor. It's one of the most important positions of an editor is authorizing stories. Like, he's the gatekeeper, right? He's going to make sure that whatever goes through is going to be, authentic, whatever. And so my value at the Weekly, and I do some other writing within the Weekly and do stuff for VisForth, but really I'm a news reporter. Like that's what I do. That's what I'm known for. That's what I'm really good at. And I think one skill set that I bring is that I know the community. I have really good sources who will bring stuff to my attention. Then you'll have kind of random people, reach out to you. We can talk about that too.
Yeah,
sometimes they'll have good story ideas. Sometimes they don't. But also, I'm just following, and I'm aware of what's going on. And then I'll just, I'll send Anthony like 4 or 5 ideas. Okay. These are things that have not been published elsewhere, obviously, right? The whole point is to get something new out to the public that no one else, that's the game that when we compete with the Star-Telegram or the Fourth Report, we're all playing this game. We're trying to get the story out first, right? It's just kind of, that's just how it works, obviously.
Yeah.
And most news stories, I think it's the same for most newsrooms. The reporters, they really are the ones who are supposed to have the story ideas. And same's true for writers, for magazines, even, literary magazines, whatever. Like, you'll pitch an idea to the editor and then they'll approve it. And if they approve it, you're guaranteed to get paid, once you turn it in.
Oh, nice.
So that's how that initial process works.
Kind of a freelance thing. You're only getting paid if the story gets published.
That's true. But also, even if you're on staff, you're still pitching the editor.
Yeah.
Same
100%.
idea.
So good segue into that next question. How tired do you get of, hey, I've got this great story and you got to listen to this and then tell me how quickly you can get this done. Like from outside people, not people in your team, not the editor.
Yeah, because we'll get stuff on our inbox on Instagram. Sometimes it's really good. I mean, I have to say, definitely appreciate the random people who reach out to us. Sometimes they have incredible scoops. Yeah. And it leads to really good stories.
But you got to hear that 5 times a day, right? You're getting a coffee and somebody go, oh, there's Eddie. Hey, Eddie.
Sure. A lot of times people will grab me and they'll say, hey, you should write about this. And it's interesting how people don't always understand what is doable and even what is newsworthy. Right. So I'll give an example. Like I have a friend who's a doctor, and he said, you wouldn't believe, what happens inside hospitals. And he's like, they always say this, if you really want a story. And what's funny is, like, anytime anyone has ever said, if you really want a story, they've never had something that has remotely qualified as a news story. And, for instance, this one doctor, he had all the right intentions, but he was describing like a systemic problem within hospitals that has been going on for decades, right?
That everybody knows about.
That everyone knows about, and it's probably been written about. And so that'd be like me trying to break a story on climate change, right? Yeah. I mean, so that's one example. People see something that is upsetting, and in their mind, they think, well, this needs to be reported on. Well, is it something that has been out there already? I mean, if there's a reason it's called news, right? And even if it's not breaking news, there needs to be some kind of new angle, right? Otherwise, we're not doing our job. We're not historians. We're out there trying to bring new information that has never been in the public's eye to the public. A few other examples. Okay, so I gotta vent. If you ever want to pitch a story to a reporter, don't start by asking if they still work at where they work at, right?
Do you still have a job?
I swear, people, the first thing they'll say is, do you still work at the Fourth Weekly? And they're lucky if I don't ignore them. It's like asking, like a really hardworking singer-songwriter, hey, you still playing music? Like, of course they are. Like, that's their soul. That's what they do. I'm always going to be writing unless, the Weekly goes out of business. I'm going to be working at the Weekly. I'm the only staff writer. I publish 2-3 times a week there. And so it's okay if you don't know, but don't ask me to tell you that I still do the thing I love, right? Yeah. Don't make me the person who has to remind you about that.
That makes sense.
It's just, it's insulting. And you can look it up, right? It's also just kind of lazy. You literally could look this up, but...
Here's his Instagram. Yep, says it right there. Still with the Weekly.
And it's fine if you don't know, but look it up. Don't make me tell you that I still do the thing that matters to me the most in my life, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I still do that. And so I'll give you a few examples of kind of bad story pitches, and it's all well intentioned.
Sure, they're excited about something. They want to share it with you.
They care enough, and I appreciate that civic engagement. They care enough that that they're wanting to share this information, but sometimes it's just not doable. And one example was this person that reached out about a murder it happened on the border. I think it was in Shreveport, just across the border. And it was a Fort Worth young woman. It's a really sad story. Yeah. She went out for her honeymoon, never came back. But there are two problems with that story from my vantage point as a news reporter. Even if I were to find that newsworthy, it happened on the border, right? Like, I'm not going to drive out there. It's just not logistically feasible.
It's a 4-hour trip. Yeah.
And the guy who murdered her is indicted. So it's not like he got away with it, right? Yeah. Now, they were upset that this person wasn't in jail waiting his trial, which is its own issue. And, we can talk, we have reported on that. There's a lot of inconsistencies with, who's in jail, who gets out of jail. It's definitely not always fair. Right. But he was facing charges, right? Yeah. I mean, he something will probably happen. Hopefully the district attorney does their job. Right. So anyway, just based on those two things, like, what can I bring to this, that's useful or even feasible? There was another lady who reached out, and sometimes there'll be these, like the CPS had stolen her, kidnapped her children, trafficked her children. And some of these things are just really...
What do you mean?
So, like, her kids are gone. They've taken the kids, and they've kidnapped them. CPS has taken the kids, and they're gone. Right. And I would never rule out... I'm not going to ever rule out something even that extreme. I've seen worse stuff happen that when that the government's been involved in. But how do I prove that, right? So even basic stories with CPS can be, like, as an example, can be really hard because they're not going to give information. Right. Yeah. Even if it were not something as extreme as that, they don't hand over investigation reports. I mean, that's super private, right? I mean, like, if I could access that, I mean, there would be a huge conflict of a huge lack of credibility on the CBS's part for, like, giving me that information. Right, dad beat kid on this date. Like, they don't just give the information out. They'll hand it to a judge and the judge acts on it, but they don't give. And that's the way it should be. There's some stuff that's just super sensitive. Medical history, stuff like that we don't have access to. So and then to prove that this crime happened, that I wasn't there, I'm just relying on this person's eyewitness account. There's no way to corroborate it. Yeah. So that's a non-starter, right? The process that I go through. So whenever someone reaches out to me and they have some, they want to describe something that happened. All right. First thing I'll do is, the first thing I do is I just kind of hash over my head, the newsworthiness of it. And then if it's interesting, I'll reach out to them, talk to them. You can get a pretty good sense of a person talking to them, right? I mean, you can get a pretty good sense. I have to always be careful about, am I being used, right? Am I being used for this person to sway a court case? And another thing that happens is, family court cases, they're in the middle of a divorce. One parent will have accusations against the other parent, and if
they were able to put a story that made the other parent look bad.
They want to use me, and it may not even be that they're consciously thinking that, but they're so upset, and maybe they're these bogus allegations. Yeah. And on a personal note, I've been through family court stuff. I've had people make false accusations, my exes. Yeah. I know what it's like. I would not want a reporter, taking that woman's or male, whatever, gender, either way, story and using it against me. So I have to just look, the question is, are they using me? I don't want to ever be used, for someone to get revenge on someone. Anyway, but if I don't have to worry about it, if it doesn't look like it's that kind of story, I'll talk to them, I'll interview them. I'll talk to my editor, get, authorized to work on the story. And then I'll talk to them. And then I'm always looking for inconsistencies, right? So, at the end of the day, my job, I need to make sure that this person is, as far as I can tell, and there's a huge, there's a lot that goes into that they're telling the truth. And so you talk to them a couple times, and if they're being very consistent and you get a good feel, the next thing I'll ask for, because a lot of stuff I deal with is criminal justice related, to back up everything with documents. And back to the idea of, like, what's a credible story, what's a provable story and what's not. It's really hard to get into stories that are not, they can't corroborate through primary sources. But for instance, if someone makes an accusation that they were jailed for this amount of time, they were wrongfully jailed, X, Y, and Z, that stuff's all documented. Yeah. Correct. Absolutely. Right. It is very public. And so if I ask for them to, like, I'll make a list as I'm interviewing them. I'll have like 10 things. I'm like, hey, can you provide 1 through 10? Right. Emails, And if they provide all 10 things quickly, I feel pretty good at that point. This is someone who's being very consistent with what they're saying. I can look at this and then I'll talk to other people, and is that consistent with what they're saying? By the time we get done with that process, I feel comfortable moving forward with the story. And
you have to be careful with this because this is your credibility. You're putting your name next to their story, so you gotta dot all your I's and cross all your T's and make sure that your credibility is not getting tarnished by somebody else's BS, right?
Correct.
They're not making up something or dragging you into some
absolutely
strange situation.
And as Eric Griffey, would say any newspaper, or maybe he just said the Weekly, we're one lawsuit away from being out of business. That's probably true of any news. Even Fox News is being sued for a huge lawsuit. No one's if you are guilty of libel. You can go out of business.
And libel is saying something that you cannot prove, right?
They have to prove that it was done maliciously and that basically we knowingly lied, right? So the way that we cover our ducks, so to speak, is we have to do all the work so we can show that we, talked to X, Y, and Z, we documented X, Y, and Z, and even if that person on this one instance lied, it's it was done in the context of we vetted it very heavily, right?
We did our homework.
Yeah, and so every story I write, it's documented, and it has to be to the level where if I need to explain to a judge my research, I can do it.
Yeah,
and I can back it up. Whatever.
That's comforting to know that the libel thing has to include malicious intent. I didn't know that, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're trying to damage somebody, so obviously you should be held liable for it.
Correct. I mean, criminal justice system, criminal intent, right? So you can do things. I mean, if it comes time to being on trial, they have to prove that you did it with criminal intent for a lot of, not for every crime. Obviously, if you shoot someone, that's clear. Yeah. But there are certain things, like the classified document thing that we're seeing with these politicians. Did they do it intentionally? So these investigators that are being hired, the Justice Department, they're looking at intent.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with publications, right? So as long as we are doing things with the right intent, with the public in mind, and we're being responsible, we're probably safe. Fortunately, in this country, the First Amendment, there's a lot of case law backing up publications. And for the most part, lawsuits that, sometimes lawsuits are done just to attack a newspaper because the politician's mad or someone got mad at them. They just want to sue them. But very rarely, if ever, do they win.
Well, and that's another probably chief function of the editor, right? Making sure that everything is...
So I was going to say there's two gatekeepers, and it's only two. There's me and any reporter, right? So hopefully I'm doing my job, and I've thought it through, and I believe in this story, and I back it up. I've done all my due diligence, and at any given point, Anthony could ask me for X, Y, and Z, and I can hand it to him. Right? It needs to all be if he asks for what my research, I'll send him the PDF. Sometimes I have for stories that are really intense. I've sent him here's what I have. He wants to see it, but then he's the second gatekeeper. So you're right. So then after he's the last one. So after he has to look at a story. And his job actually is not just to trust that I've done everything.
Yeah.
He has to
verify.
Correct. And I respect that. And sometimes he'll come back and he'll have real strong questions. And I respect that because he's doing his job. He's not getting lazy and saying, "Well, Eddie hasn't gotten a suit in 10 years. We're probably good for another 10 years." I mean, I make mistakes. People make mistakes, and so his job is to just be really careful. And it's not an easy job because that's probably the bigger danger for any newspaper, I should say. Even beyond advertising is avoiding a lawsuit that would be successful.
Yeah.
So, but 100%. That's the game. That's the game that we're in. So
sounds dicey, but you guys know what you're doing. You're professionals. People can find you on Instagram at Downtown Edward Brown. Correct?
Yeah.
Is there another?
There's a police crotch.
just right there. Let me see. Is that the whole thumbnail, or did I do that?
Just another police crotch.
That's the whole thumbnail.
Yep.
Look into that.
It's a good story.
How about other social media sites? You said y'all are kind of branching into TikTok. Do you have a TikTok account?
I do not.
Stay off of it.
Really.
It's a dumpster fire.
It's a rabbit hole, I've heard, right? It's incredibly addictive.
The first time I opened it up, my girlfriend had it on her phone, and I was like, "What is that?" She said, "TikTok." I had already decided I was not getting a TikTok. but I ended up looking at what she was looking at because she was looking at cute dogs and I think like ocean stuff like dolphins and whales, and we were just scrolling through it. And I mean, just one after another. And we looked up and we'd been sitting on the couch for like an hour and a half.
It's learning.
It was crazy.
It's learning about you as you do that, and it's getting better and better, just holding you there.
I mean, Facebook and Instagram aside, TikTok has got an algorithm that figures you out so fast. It's ridiculous.
I agree.
It's unbelievable.
I like Instagram. So our outlets, again, our website, fwweekly.com, has everything that you'll find in print. It's on our website, plus some stuff that maybe won't be in print, for space reasons. I would encourage folks to follow our Instagram page. I appreciate you plugging us. Sorry, my Instagram page, but I think the Weekly, we reach a lot of people through Instagram.
And you guys are extremely active too. I see you commenting and liking on different posts, and you're engaged with the community through your social media, which I think is awesome.
Thank you. And I would say that's Instagram seems to be our most successful outlet for following people. And so we try to do our best to give at least a good summary of what you're going to find in our newspaper on Instagram. Now, it's going to be a shorter 2,200 characters. We all know that, it's a shorter version of the story, but if we can reach people and at least give them a summary of what we're doing, that's better than nothing. Yeah. And so we take that seriously, and we try to, keep that updated. People get a good, sense of, what we're doing with our newspaper.
Well, I'll make sure that all that's in the show notes. I'm also going to include, episode 113 with the Funky Panther Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not checked that out, these are friends of ours that also had Edward on not too long ago. And the title of 113 is Corrupt Judges of Tarrant County. And I got to thank Edward for being so respectful. Whenever we were talking about putting this interview together, I'd said, well, we really don't do anything political. And we
held back.
We nipped that in the bud right off the bat because I had heard episode 113, and I didn't want to do a revisit of what the Funky Panther did, but you were very thorough in that episode. You brought to light something I didn't know was a problem, and I would encourage people to go check that out. Again, that's the Funky Panther Podcast, episode 113, Corrupt Judges of Tarrant County with Edward Brown. Excellent episode. So, and is there anything else you'd like the audience to know about Edward Brown before we get out of here?
Oh, I'm not here to plug myself, but I really, I think I would just close by saying, the work journalists do is it's very difficult, and until someone does it, working on a cover story, it's work. Oh, yeah. It's a lot of interviews that you'll never use. It's a lot of transcribing. It's a lot of research. Waiting on open records requests. Just trying to think over a story to make sure you're not missing anything or you're not being misstating anything. And it's, shout out to all my, fellow reporters out there doing the work, because we get, flack, for what we do often.
From
but
every direction, I'm sure.
At the very least, whether you like what we do or not, understand that it is work and it is grueling, and we do it proudly, so. Well,
and the simple truth is you guys are connecting our community, and that makes Fort Worth a better place. So all feelings aside on any other issue, you guys are doing good work, and I appreciate it. So
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Fort Worth Roots. In the show notes, you can find all those links we were talking about for Fort Worth Weekly, for Edward Brown, and for the Funky Panther Podcast, episode 113, and anything else I can think to cram in there. So check that out.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good.
One more time, Edward, thanks for being here, man.
My pleasure,
and Fort Worth Roots, we'll see you next week. Big shout out to our new friend Edward Brown, award-winning staff writer for the Fort Worth Weekly. Excellent episode, and I gotta say, I appreciate this guy for coming on the show and respecting our hard line in the sand that we're going to stay away from political topics. He wanted to talk about a certain thing, and I told him that we didn't want to do that on the Fort Worth Roots podcast, and he still came on the show. A great guy, and I really appreciate that. So I do want to direct your attention to my friends over at the Funky Panther. They did an episode with Edward. It's episode 113. It's titled Corrupt Judges of Tarrant County with Edward Brown of Fort Worth Weekly. And this is his passion. This is his mission. I really want you to hear this story. It just didn't really have a place on the Fort Worth Roots podcast. And Edward, I appreciate you respecting that so much. So do us a favor. Go check that out. You like podcasts, you like Fort Worth podcasts. If you haven't listened to the Funky Panther podcast yet, you're missing out anyway. Again, that's episode 113. I'll make sure that's in the show notes for you. Okay, FortWorthWeekly.com. It's FWWeekly.com online. Fort Worth Weekly on Instagram and YouTube. And then be careful of the tricksters on the TikTok. On TikTok, it is Fort_Worth_Weekly. I found some erroneous accounts on TikTok trying to say they were Fort Worth Weekly. Didn't look right. So anyway, this looks to be the right account. I'm going to put that in the show notes. That's Fort_Worth_Weekly on TikTok in the show notes. Okay, no big deal. And then if you want to follow Edward himself, it is Downtown Edward Brown on Instagram. And the video series he does where he highlights businesses around Fort Worth is really exceptional. We talked about a little bit during this episode with him and Joe Tacky at Cloudland Studios. That was a great episode. And he's done a lot more with local businesses around town. And shout out to the Fort Worth Weekly crew. These guys are out there really trying to promote local businesses and strengthen our community by sharing local music and local art and events and things like that. And I don't know what you think about the old Fort Worth Weekly, but I would like to point out that these guys are probably the most, I feel like the most substantial publication in our city. That's kind of everybody knows what it is and where to get a copy. And I don't know, pound for pound, they're doing a lot of good. So shout out to you guys. Thank you for the hard work that you put into that paper. And you've got a listener here. So keep doing your thing. Love it. All right, let's get on to the sponsors. WoodPostMetalworks.com. Go to woodpostmetalworks.com and use offer code podcast817. They specialize in metal signs with or without LED backlighting, fence and gate repair or installation, light steel fabrication, industrial plasma cutting, and more. Again, that is woodpostmetalworks.com. And shout out to the folks over there at Wood Post Metalworks. I've got some stuff to talk to you about. So let's come on. Be on the show. Houk Walker Originals. You can go to houkwalker.com. They offer a huge variety of unique and personalized gifts. Also, laser engraving to customize just about anything you can think of. Before you go making custom swag for your business or your side gig on some website where the money is going to go out of town, why don't you consider shopping with somebody that's going to bend over backwards to make sure that your product comes out right and is doing everything they can to make their customers happy. And they support a local podcast. Check them out, houkwalker.com. Keep Fort Worth dollars in Fort Worth pockets. Roofing Solutions by Darren Houk. RoofingSolutionsHouk.com is where you can get their information. 817-692-8496. We had a little hailstorm roll through here. I didn't believe it because I didn't see it. But I have since seen some photographic evidence of little hailstones that assaulted us during the night. There was also a crazy windstorm. I saw semi-trucks flipped over, signs twisted around, all sorts of damage from this wind. In fact, the place of employment where I receive a paycheck, we lost 6 transformers. There were 3 power line poles down. It was destructive. So anyway, if you have any inkling of an idea that you might have some damage on your roof, give my friends over at Roofing Solutions by Darren Houk a call, 817-692-8496, and this would be the best time to take advantage of the offer that they gave us, I don't know, 8-9 months ago, 10 months ago, talking about the roofing tune-up. You guys, Fort Worth Roots podcast listeners, all you got to do is say the name of the podcast. You might even be able to just call them and be like, oh, I heard about you on the podcast, and they'll give you the discount. But it's a 50% discount. You get half off a roofing tune-up. And basically, this is an excuse for them to get on your roof, check everything out, make sure you're good. And then also, during these hot Texas summers, all of the caulking that goes around vent covers and pipe jacks and all the stuff that sticks out of your roof, that caulking that goes around it, it gets weathered, dried out, flakes off, and now you've got a point of entry for moisture or water, rain. So anyway, this covers that. They'll get up there, they'll fix it all up, and if they get up there and there's more damage than the $250 is going to cover, they'll stop everything. They'll take some pictures. They'll come down and say, look, We're not going to charge you anything, but we can't do it for the $250 because you've got this kind of damage. Do you want us to come up with a quote for that, and then we'll move forward? Anyway, all I'm trying to tell you is they're not going to try to rake you over the coals. They're not going to get up there and be like, oh, well, we fixed this, and this, and now you owe us the house, basically. We own the house now. It's not how it works. These are good folks, and they're my friends now. They're not just sponsors. I love the Houk family. They're good to me. Roofing Solutions by Darren Houk, roofingsolutionshouk.com, 817-692-8496, and you get a 50% off discount on a roofing tune-up. That's for all you peoples over here in the greater Fort Worth area. And then some. So it actually extends pretty far out. But give them a call, 817-692-8496. Okay. And then you guys know about our friends at Pouring Glory. Did you hear about this? We got a new sponsor. I'm pretty excited about this. We've been pretty excited about old Pouring Glory for a while because it's my spot. I've just liked going there forever. And we've done events there. I've done one event there. And then they have invited us to some of their events. So we've been working together. We've been doing stuff. And just recently, Scott was like, what's it going to take to be a sponsor of the show? I was like, bro, you just say the word. All right. Pouring Glory is your destination for eats, beers, and good company. And that's true. There's a lot of cool people. When I sit down there, I'm usually alone. And there's always somebody there to hang out with and talk stuff. Good company. We're always genuinely happy to see you, whether you're grabbing a quick lunch or planning a corporate meeting that's more fun than usual. We're located at the heart of Fort Worth, Fort Worth's exciting near South Side, just blocks from Magnolia off of South Main Street. Award-winning tap wall. They do have a ton of fresh taps. Most of them are fairly local. You know, some of them are Fort Worth, some of them are the area, but all good stuff. And then some out-of-town stuff too. Plus impossibly good food. I had, what do they call that? The Juicy Lucy hamburgers today. I was there today. And they take the hamburger patty and they inject it with liquid cheese. It's delicious. Anyway, I think that's called the Juicy Lucy. Combine that with a relaxed atmosphere and you've got the making of a new adventure or an old haunt. Go check this place out. They're my friends. They're good people, and none of that matters to you, but they have great beer. What's the difference, right? What's the difference between a place with not great beer and a place with great beer? Well, it's how they clean their taps, and it's how fresh the beer is, and it's how cold the beer is. And they keep their lines clean. They've got cold beer, and it's all fresh. So that's why it's good. That's the difference. I keep saying they've got good beer, but they do. Yeah, you go to a place, I won't mention names, but you go to one of these nationwide chains, that have beer, and sometimes you taste your beer and you're like, I don't know, it tastes a little off. It's because their lines are dirty, bro. That's what that's about. And then, of course, if it's hot, you know that immediately. But okay, but not Pouring Glory. They've got great stuff, great beer on tap, and their food is incredible. If you don't drink a lot of beer, you probably shouldn't drink a lot of beer. You've been on that diet for a while. But the food, you're gonna have to eat. Try this place out. Try their food. Try their burgers. Try their wings. I really like their chicken wings. I get the lemon pepper. Actually, I had Scott tell me the other day, he's like, the only reason I keep the lemon pepper chicken wings on the menu is for you. And I was like, okay, I'm okay with that. Keep them coming. Good deal. All right, that's all the sponsors. Shout out to the sponsors. Thank you very much for taking care of the Fort Worth Roots podcast. Just the fact that we have these sponsors means that we're going to be able to do bigger and better things all the time. We're growing. Things are happening. We're talking to folks. I keep telling you about this music series, but I don't have any details yet. But we're getting there. Events. All right, let's talk about April 7th out at Lola's for the Psychedelic Panther. Our buddy Joe Guzman, we've done at least 2 episodes with him, maybe more. Can't remember offhand, but I'm always talking to him. Joe Guzman's good people. Psychedelic Panther is, they kind of bring in a new genre of music. It's not new to the area. It's new to a festival. Like all of these good psychedelic bands in one spot. Some of them are from Denton. A lot of them are from Fort Worth. Got some from Dallas, but just kind of all over the place. And then Houk the Destroyer with Matt Broyles and his homies. I can't remember the country, and shame on me because the guy has literally been on the show, but from another country. This guy is flying in, and I don't know the details. I could be wrong on this, but Houk the Destroyer is a multi-nation band. Like, they don't all live here, but they're all coming here if it's like last year. And that's one of the big draws. We get a national audience at this thing, Psychedelic Panther. As far as I know, I think 2 or 3 days ago, I saw an ad by Joe Guzman saying they're still looking for vendors for this event. So if you want to come to this badass festival, go to Psychedelic Panther on Facebook. There'll be a link for the website, and you can get more information, all that good stuff. But we'd love to see you there. Even if you're not going to be a vendor, it's going to be a good time. And Fort Worth Roots will be there, posted up, doing recordings, just taking pictures and covering the event, just like we will April 22nd at the River Oaks Spring Fest Car Show. Yes, sir, we'll be there. Last year there were over 10,000 people in attendance. We've adjusted that number. We've done some more math and found that there are confirmed numbers, 10,000 people last year. We had 330 classic cars, I believe, 88 vendors, and there were supposed to be 5 food trucks. I think only 2 showed up, but they'll definitely be there this year. Last year we didn't know what was going on, how many people were going to show up, whatnot, but now we've got solid analytics that people can look at and go, okay, I'll bring my food truck. And even the food trucks that did show up, they knew that other food trucks would be there, and they weren't sure about the numbers. So I don't know that they were fully loaded either. Like, people were kind of, I don't want to say phoning it in or being haphazard with the whole thing, but I think everybody was operating with a little bit of under a note of caution because they just didn't know what to expect with this event. But it was amazing. It's going to be held out here at YMCA Camp Carter in River Oaks area, and it's going to be a great fun time. If you haven't seen this place, it sits on 300 plus acres. It's going to be kayaking, zip lining, horseback riding, all sorts of crazy stuff, and the classic cars and the vendors and the Fort Worth Roots podcast will be set up. It's going to be live music. So anyway, put that on your calendar for sure. April 22nd, River Oaks Springfest Car Show. And then we are actually, whisper, nothing finalized yet. There may very well be an event coming up at Pouring Glory to celebrate the 420. So keep your ear to the ground for that one. Wouldn't that be a funny sight? Hey, what are you doing, Bob? Why are you laying on the ground? I got my ear to the ground. I'm trying to find out when the 420 thing is. Oh, that's silly, Bob. 420's on a Thursday this year. And then Bob just looks silly. Silly old Bob. Okay, that's it. We got sponsors and events out of the way. Of course, you know, I think I've mentioned this a couple times. Sometime in September. Last year we did it September 13th. It was on a Saturday. It will probably be on a Saturday this year too. I don't know why we would change that, but Fort Worth Roots will be doing an annual event. And last year it was our 100th episode celebration. But we're going to keep it going. Maybe that's what we call it. Maybe it's like the 158th episode party. I don't know. That'd work. Sure. But there's a lot more details behind that. So I'm working on it. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Monday. And I'm going to release an episode for you again this week. You're going to be getting a minimum of 2 episodes every week until I clear this backlog. I know I've said stuff like that in the past. We did put out 2 episodes last week. I'm going to put out 2 episodes this week, and we're just going to keep going. Hit it as hard as we can because we're doing so many recordings. I've got so many people reaching out to me wanting to be on the show, and that's not a pat on the back. It's just trying to convey to you the situation. And if you've been on the show and your episode hasn't aired yet, I'm working on it. I promise. So, okay. All right, and shout out to Dr. Bethany Malone. I was out there at a Funky Picnic today. I didn't stay for the whole thing, but I was there for quite a while. Did some trivia, had some excellent chili. It's a fun little place that funky picnic, and they do trivia on the regular. So if you're into that kind of thing, that's your place. They got a really cool dude that does the trivia for him or whatever. He's a educator and just a nice guy. I sat there and I talked to him for probably an hour, and then turned out he was the guy calling the trivia. I was like, oh, okay. I'm sitting next to a celebrity. I didn't even know it. But it was a good event. And the colon cancer cook-off, after talking to Dr. Malone today, is intended to be a annual event. So it's fun times. It's a charity thing. The money goes to an organization that filters that money back into Fort Worth directly. And Bethany wants to make sure we do this on a regular basis to help spread awareness, but also raise funds for that organization that is helping Fort Worth residents directly. So, okie dokie, that's it. And I am going to start cranking out the next episode. So I'll see you later this week. Have a wonderful Monday, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.